Well, I had some trouble finding the right leash, then the,
Oh, sure. So is that the size down?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
That, I
looks
mean,
better.
that looks better, right? It
For
fits
sure.
tighter, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Other than that, like, behavior-wise and working-wise, he's been good at home, so.
Okay. How the walks been?
Sorry,
The walks?
the walks. Yeah, about the same.
Good.
He's good with me, and, yeah. Austin's been on vacation, so he hasn't
Oh,
been
that's
able
right.
to go walk with him.
Okay, so we're still, that's still kind of a variable there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think here. When you, have you exposed them to like any new environments and stuff?
Not yet. I wanted to get this stuff first, and then I want to take them like to a kind of park near us and stuff like that, and try to
Okay.
use that with them.
Because you've only had that for a couple of days, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll review what we covered last week, which I think we started with return, but last time we started with return and stuff.
Right.
See how that's going.
Okay.
And then from there, is there anything particular you'd like to work on?
Not off the top of my head. I mean,
So I know that, when I remember, it's resource guarding
yeah.
and people entering the home.
And the people leaving the home, the like separation,
Okay.
frustration.
Gotcha.
whatever it is.
Okay. So let's go into that review, and then we'll move on to the next thing, okay?
Yep.
What's the number currently set at?
25.
There you go, get one turn. And when you walk them outside, is it like that? Like, is it that kind of tune in?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And I will say with the muzzle on, when he walks like right up behind us, like he did the time he tried to bite, it's a little ease to the mind.
Yeah, you're not worried about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get it. Good. We're gonna come with that. Okay, so one thing I see here is that left hand. So
Okay.
you're still,
Yeah.
you're used to using it.
Yep.
Is you always want to keep those hands down. Especially now that we don't have to worry so much about is he going to try to nip at our heels.
Right.
Again, takes that stressor off. Is that I'm wanting him to mentally lock into you.
Yeah.
So on some of your left turns, your turns are correct, but you were using that left hand.
Okay.
Kind of stall a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So they look good. I don't feel like I don't know if you were really slowing down prior to those turns. I feel like you're kind of just going into them.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try that again.
Okay.
I'm gonna have you give a little bit more slack. There you go. That's good right there. Yep. And now when you walk, everything's gonna stay the same, except now when you're moving. So if I'm moving normally, you know, like this, and I'm gonna make that left turn, I'm gonna try to slow down. And then I pick back up again, right?
Okay.
Then I will slow down, yep, yep. And then go to that turn, we're quick up, yep, yep, and relax, up, tap, yep, yep, up, and relax, yep, yep. Okay, the other thing is being very strict. So earlier when I was just touching base with you,
Yeah.
you were standing by the pans there, and he got up and started wandering, and you just kind of gave him the slack. Whenever you're, I look at it as if you're ever going to be like distracted, having a conversation or something, you want control.
Okay.
Whenever it's going to be okay, we're not going to be distracted. Now we can be attentive to what you're doing. Then I give the freedom, right? So just assume that if you're not doing anything, he's doing something.
Okay.
Okay. and this is a super common thing that I come across, you know, because you're just standing there and we're inside a building, so it's kind of like, who the hell cares?
Right.
But for him, that's what matters.
Okay.
If he's going like, man, mom's super strict, I can't get up, I can't walk away, I can't do this, I can't do that without some kind of permission. Okay, so then, yep. And it gives you a lot more things to discipline for outside of what we typically get. And I use every opportunity to enforce discipline, okay? Because that's what creates the progress that you're looking for.
Okay.
So that's just something to bear in mind. So like if you're at a stop sign and you're ready, or your stoplight and waiting for it to turn green, you know, you want him at your side, sitting down. I don't need perfect, I don't need facing, at least like, you know, doing the job.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, the way I look at the obedience stuff is it's a frame of reference. And I always put behavior first. If he's been good everywhere else and all that stuff and getting it with the level of beats that we have, unless the owner wants to really tighten it up, I go, that's fine. Now, if the dog is still being a jerk, then I'm like, then I'm going to use every sort of single opportunity and I'm going to make it really strict on you because that gives me more opportunity to remote him. Okay? So have you try those turns again? This time making sure that we slow down and using less of that left arm to control him, right? Using that body language. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Good. That's picnic. Pretty sure it's picnic, yeah. Yeah. Right, good job. Stop. That's okay. Good. Better. Okay. Yeah. Good. Now that step away there, was that just so you wouldn't jump on you?
Yeah.
Okay. Always anchor yourself.
Okay.
This is my space. Okay. So it's kind of like you ever been to a concert and like someone's trying to push through, and you kind of resist, right? You don't want to give up your space, otherwise they push you aside next thing you know they're in front of you.
Right.
Same thing here. Okay. So you always anchor yourself. And you use that as your frame of reference. So when he jumped up, I was just remoted.
Okay.
He would have fixed it.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't need to give up space.
Yeah.
Because then you end up reinforcing that habit.
Okay.
I know dogs are humans typically give up the space, you move out the way, stuff like that. I always anchor myself and make the dog give space to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Anything with that? Any questions? No. Okay. So what we have on our agenda essentially is the behavior with Austin, of course,
Yeah.
right? The resource guarding around his place bed.
Yep.
Now, when you place him yourself, does he guard it?
No.
It's only when he's there on his own terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's, like, if he's got like a shoe or anything that he would want to guard, we usually tell him to go to his spot, so that's where it usually stays.
Uh-huh.
So I'm assuming that, well, I know for with Austin, the first time he went after him, it was because that shoe was right
Oh, I
next
see
to
what you're saying. Sure.
So his valuable stuff is usually right around his place anyways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you do place him on your own,
Mhm.
will he stay there?
He'll stay there for a while, and most of the time I try to release him before he tries to do it himself.
Okay.
Because, I mean, he'll be there for a few minutes and he'll just lay down usually.
But you won't stay there for like an hour or so.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's do, we're gonna switch. We'll go to my puppy room here, and because we're gonna work on duration work,
Okay.
and then we can press behavior once Austin comes back. We'll set up a Zoom
Okay.
so that everybody can be there, and then we'll start talking about more behavioral stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the meantime, Enrique, because we're just gonna be doing place work, is if you wanna do a little mini pack walk with these guys,
Okay.
and then just be back by, you started at 3?
Yeah.
At 4, so I
Okay.
can go over the video stuff with you.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna have my consultation at 4:15.
All right.
Okay.
You want to bring this with you, or you got it?
I got it. Thank you. So go ahead and follow me, Savannah. All right. So we're gonna do more formal place work here.
Okay.
So, do you know the definition, or at least like how it's supposed to work with the place command?
Probably not officially.
Okay. So, place, place is a duration command, okay? Go ahead and put them in the up tabs. Yep. There you go. Okay, so anytime you, even though you didn't say heal or anything, I just have them under control.
Yeah.
So I was actually with a client yesterday in this room, and her dog is very leash reactive,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought in my pitty, Lexi, and when I told her to stop, Lexi just, like, I don't even say anything, she just defaults into like relaxing and like sitting down,
Yeah.
and she'll hold tap. She'll be in that position until I give her, you know, a formal, like, okay, you can go be free, or I give her another command, but she just defaults into like relax and sit down and wait for dad and
Yeah.
give you permission. So that's what you're doing here. Like, it's like, even though you didn't say anything, it's like you're still behaving yourself.
Right.
Okay. So, place command, it's meant for duration control. Where it can help you is, I don't want you to view this as a means of addressing the behavior. Okay. There's 2 approaches here. So, let's say when people come over, like, he's excited, he's going like loopy and stuff. Most trainers will teach you, like, you have your dog in the bed. If your dog is in the bed, your dog can't be loopy and jumping all over your guest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get that theory and I understand it. It's a preventative approach, so
Right.
technically it's correct. The dog is here, the guest comes in, they never interact because he's under control. But mentally, he may still be wanting to engage with the guest. So the moment you release him, the moment you release him, he would go straight to what he wanted to do, which was, you know, greet or bark or whatever. Yep. Good job. Yep. There we go. Whatever he's wanting to do, he would go into that behavior.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's, when it comes to people entering the home, that's a separate exercise that I teach.
Okay.
What this would be is like preventative control of, like, we're gonna have guests around and stuff like that, and we don't want interaction or something. Or maybe you've had a guest that's had like a negative interaction,
Mhm.
and there's like some distrust there.
Yep.
Is this gives us that control of, like, hey, like, you know, we got really good control now.
Yeah.
He's not gonna be a jerk, blah, blah, blah. And it makes that person feel better because they can see the dog is under control.
Right.
Okay? So they kind of go hand in hand, but this is not an answer for his behavior when people enter. That's something separate.
Right.
Okay, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So another good example would be a trainer just recently posted on the internet, like, using this as a way for a dog to coexist with a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, realistically speaking, that cat's not going anywhere. That
Right.
cat lives there. So, and the dog will not be on here every day of its life.
Right.
Right. So coexistence would be the dog and the cat are free and they don't mess with each other. Okay. And what he was teaching was, if your dog is here, your dog can attack. And I get that, but that's not realistic. Okay. Realistic would be, all right, we're gonna muzzle a dog. You know, we've done our baseline stuff, like the heel, whatever, to teach concept. And then when the dog has any inkling of doing something to the cat, I correct it.
Mm-hmm.
So the dog learns I can't lunge the cat, can't bite the cat, can't bark the cat, can't harass the cat.
Right.
I guess all I can do is just coexist and leave the cat alone. That's realistic, okay? So that's the difference between these things. So just, you know, whenever we cover stuff, just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do get confused and they think that this is the answer. This is just part of the answer.
Right.
Okay. So I know he's got the previous training. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pretend like he doesn't know anything, but he's probably gonna get it very quickly.
Mhm.
Okay. We're not gonna use the word place right now. Is that what you use?
He uses a spot, actually.
Spot? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's fine. So we're not gonna use the spot word, we're gonna condition him from ground zero. He's most likely to get it very quickly, and then once I see that he's got a good concept, then we're gonna layer in that word spot, okay? So here, what I do is I start at a distance of about 2 squares here. And you're gonna shorten your leash, and you're gonna start tapping, no words, and slight pressure towards the mat itself, okay? Now, what we should see is if he's familiar with this, he's just gonna hop right on it, okay? Since it's unfamiliar, you could get some resistance.
Yeah.
If that happens, what I do is I brace the bed as I'm pulling forward and tapping, because sometimes the dogs will push the bed and they'll shove it off.
Okay.
But essentially, you're trying to get him to put himself onto the mat because of the remote. Okay. So ideally, I don't want to physically plop him there.
Yeah.
I want to just tap, like pull forward to ease him or to get him to make the decision to place himself. Okay. And you'll do it again at about a 2 square distance.
Okay.
You don't want to move like this. Yep, good job. Good. I don't want you moving forward, but if you need to step forward to brace the mat, that's perfectly fine. Okay? And don't worry about heel or anything like right now. We're just teaching them to move to the placemat itself. Okay? So go ahead and bring them forward. And some dogs will just rush on there on their own. You'll just pull them off. Yeah, like that. And pull them back. There you go. That's good right there. And you're gonna wait a moment. And now you're going to tap, 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 like that, okay? And then you're gonna cue the word break.
Break.
And then release, or pull them off. Yep, and we're gonna repeat that 4 more times. Right, pull it back.
Break. Break.
Pull, there you go. Yep, keep, and then bring them a little bit further back, there you go. And then wait a moment, and now did you tap them there at all?
Back there.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have you make it a bit more,
Delayed, like?
yeah, like what you do, so here with, I don't care where,
Okay.
but just stop with you first, and then tapping to make it real kind of clear. We go from I'm just hanging out here,
Yeah.
because it just looked like he walked back and walked forward and came
Okay.
over,
Okay.
as opposed to a pause, and then the tapping happened, and then he hopped on, okay?
Okay, break.
Right, better? There, much better. Good.
Okay, break.
Good, and good. 3 more times. Good.
Okay, break.
Good. 2 more. Right. Good. The last one.
Okay, break.
Very good. Okay. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna do the same thing, except you're gonna start moving and sending from different directions. Okay?
Okay, break. Like moving here?
Yeah, exactly. Tap, tap, good job, tap, tap, good job, up a little bit.
And sitting, laying on the?
So for the place command, it's the most lenient. I don't care what he does, sit, stand, lay down. I just care that he's within the area of the placemat itself.
Right.
Okay? So when we do place, we do not, excuse me, do not say sit or say down or stay after it, okay? Because if I said place and then down, it's not a place command anymore.
Right.
It's a down command. So then if he gets up, I have to correct him because that's breaking position. And for the average dog owner, what ends up happening is they forget that they downed the dog. And then they, they'll say, place down, and they'll walk away and put him in place, the dog's standing up, but they're thinking, oh, the dog's on place.
Yeah.
Right? But technically, it's a down, it just happens to be on the plate or the spot mat, whatever.
Right.
So you would have to correct that, because down and sit is very specific. Okay, down would be this, right? I don't care what surface, it could be on the couch, it could be on the floor, it could be on the mat. Down just means lay down. Anything outside of that position would be corrected. Okay? So when we say place, I go, or spot, I don't care what he does, sit, stand, lay down, I just care that he doesn't step off of the area.
Okay.
Okay? Break.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Okay, 2 more.
Okay.
Good, and last one.
Okay, great.
Good. Okay. Okay. So
Okay.
now,
Great.
what you're gonna do is, instead of adding in leash pressure, you're just gonna start tapping.
Okay.
And what I wanna see is that tapping itself gets him to move forward, okay? If you're tapping and he's like, you might see this in the beginning, or like he might move back or something, you just keep promoting and then add in very little pressure forward to get him to go.
Only if I need to.
Yeah, only if he's not, so I usually give 2 to 3 taps to see what his response is,
Yeah.
and then if he keeps moving back or away, then I add in a little bit of pressure as I'm tapping to guide him.
Okay.
Because now I'm trying to transfer everything over to the remote itself
Right.
and not having the training wheel of the leash pressure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Good. Yeah, pull, pull, pull. Pull, 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 pull. There he is, good boy. Okay, yeah, 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 yep, you're good, yeah, yeah, that's correct, very good. 3 more.
Okay, great.
That was better.
Yeah. Okay, great. He like already wants to go.
Yeah, and I'll explain what's going on here after these 2. Good.
Okay, great.
Very good. You go to drop the leash,
Got it.
and, yep, have a seat. You're gonna pause for a second. So, yep, there we go.
I didn't even,
You didn't.
I didn't even get there, yeah.
Okay. So, what we're doing here is, like I said, like if he's familiar with the behavior, he's just gonna shoot there, okay? So I can see the concept.
Yeah.
Now it's just, because he was trained e-collar, correct? You guys, they just didn't teach you the e-collar, give you one or something like that?
They did the e-collar and then they did that like drawstring collar that like
Oh, sure, the slip.
goes around his, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Slip lead, is that what it's called?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but then they just didn't transfer to you, is that correct?
Correct, yeah, pretty much.
So, what we're doing is everybody tap, 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 there we go. Everybody teaches remote differently,
Mhm.
okay? Most trainers apply the remote after they've taught a behavior. So like they might use food to
Right.
teach the dog to go onto the bed,
Yep.
and then they layer in the remote over it, okay? I prefer to just use remote to teach anything or everything because it comes from a discipline standpoint,
Mhm.
okay? So right now, we're conditioning him that when he feels the tap, it needs to go to the bed, and when he's on the bed, everything turns off.
Mhm.
So kind of like the leash walking, if he was going one way and you turn, you would keep promoting until you're going the same direction and he's at your side,
Right.
okay? So here, he's learning, when I feel the remote, there is another answer to turning it off, and that answer is go to this object,
Mhm.
okay? First, we started close to make things simpler for him to go to, and then we made it more difficult by moving around. So dogs are very much, picture-based or how things look.
Mhm.
So if you always send him from one particular spot or direction,
Great.
and then one day you switch it to this way,
Yep.
he's gonna be super confused, because he's so used to this way.
Right.
Or, like I've seen dogs, they'll come around and they'll go like that,
Yeah.
okay? Because it's so conditioned in them. So I'm teaching them, going to this object has
several answers.
Right.
Okay, from different directions and stuff. I don't care how you get there, just because you get there. Okay, so we're broadening that picture so he doesn't get so tuned in to like I go one specific way. Okay. Then we started to add distance to it, and then we started to remove the leash pressure, and more so just using the remote. Okay. So you sat down, and he kind of immediately came up, and he thought about it, but then he corrected before you had a chance to correct. Right? That's fine. And then he thinks about it again, and the pause came off. And I think at that point you were tapping, right? And then he retracted and went back onto the bed. So he's already connecting that when he feels the tapping in this scenario, it means to go back onto the area. Okay? Yeah, so you see this right here? This is already the brain not liking being contained and wanting to remove itself. Okay? So anxious behavior wants to move. I just had a consultation before you. It was with the German Shepherd. And for the first like 15 minutes, he's very anxious. He kept back and forth, laying down, standing up, back and forth, right? And then I took him and I corrected him a couple of times, and then he laid here for the rest of the consultation. And he maybe got up like 3 times, but I would correct him. And then by the end, he stayed for like 20 minutes without moving. Yeah. Because I disrupted, I disrupted the anxious pattern of wanting to move. Okay. So now, what's your number currently?
25.
25. Okay. So you see how he's starting to escalate, right? So he's starting to get whiny, a bit more vocal. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start challenging him because he wants to move.
Right.
And remote has told him you can't move. Okay. Let's go to 30. And what's going to happen is we're going to keep increasing, and he's going to most likely break off of the placemat. You'll just keep promoting if he does. And then if needed, you're going to pick up the leash, a little bit of pressure to get him back. As soon as he goes back, we're going to leave him alone. Okay? So go ahead and tap. Tap. And then wait a moment. Good. And we're going to see what happens here. Okay? So you went to 30.
Yep.
And he was looking at you and starting to whine because he's wanting to go.
Yep.
And what you did here is what you said was disengage from me. Because mentally he's over there, physically he's over here. That disconnect is what causes anxiety. Okay? So when you tapped him and he said, don't care about me, your job is to be there.
Yeah.
He did this quicker than most dogs, is he just turned around. And he's going,
F you.
no, it was not F you. This is actually, I was looking at mom, and I started to really want to be with mom, causing anxiety. The correction happened, disagreeing with that behavior. So since he can't handle looking at you and not engaging, he gives avoidance behavior, and then the whining stopped.
Okay.
Because there's nothing he's engaged with now.
Could this kind of, like what you're saying, kind of reminds me of when I'm like doing stuff around the house, right? Like whether it's laundry or just cleaning, he is constantly following me, like room to room. So this is kind of that same mentality.
Exactly.
And since he's bitten Austin, now like he's always right behind me. It's like I'm like walking through my house, like constantly checking my ankles. You know?
Right.
So it seems like the same anxious like following and having to be.
It's attachment. Okay. Tap. And then we see what happens. Okay. So dogs will naturally follow the owner, like pack mentality type of deal. Independent dogs won't. Okay. Tap. 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 Wait a moment. Tap. 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 Wait a moment. Tap. 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 Okay. Tap. 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 Let's go to 35. Tap. tap, 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 tap. We'll see what happens. I'll just go to 40. So, because I don't care if he looks at me, it's you,
Right.
right? So they call them Velcro dogs. And Velcro dogs tend to have separation anxiety, okay?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. So like, you put them in the bathroom and stuff, how he like has those issues.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's part of, this is tap, 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 tap. Let's go to 45. So, yes, okay. So I've learned throughout my years of training that when we're working with behavior, we're almost always going opposite to the dog, okay? Anxious energy wants to move. So here, if you keep them contained, that anxiety starts to escalate because it can't go anywhere, okay? So then that's where you have to step in, and so physically you have him contained. Mentally, he's not contained.
Right.
That's what you're doing now, okay? But it's gonna force mistakes, right? So it forced him off, and that's what I said in the very beginning. Because now he has to distinguish what is the remote going off for. And you're remoting because he's attached or engaged, he's being anxious, right? But he might think like, maybe it's me being on this area. So then he hops off, but it doesn't go away. The attack keeps happening. He repositions, it goes away, right? So then all that stuff happened, and now he's facing away from you again, right? And he's also not whining, okay? So, and I had another case, though I saw them earlier today as well. Last time I saw them, I was working with them, and the dog was very attached to the mom. And she was across the odds, like at the path, she was almost at the path, and the husband was on the other side. And the dog kept looking and whining and crying and whining. And I think we went as high as 80 before the dog did this and then quieted down. And the owner felt like, oh my God, what the hell? Like, how's he not like responding? Like, because the dog is so anxious that physically he's overriding the e-collar. And you have to reach that point where you break the anxiety and then the dog settles. Okay, so this is very similar to that case. Okay, so
this you wouldn't want to do without him muzzled, right? Like if I was to practice this at home, like I wouldn't want him not muzzled.
if you're gonna be applying, any form of pressure, I would suggest the muzzle. Okay, because now you're confronting problems, and one of the things that we see is that. Like for instance, I'm working in another case, the dog attacks a Yorkie. The dog attacks the owners only at night when they kennel him. Okay? He'll turn around and be really aggressive. So we started confronting that problem, right? Then I saw them a week later, and they're like, hey Jesse, like he's been doing better, but now when we're near his bed, he's doing the behavior there, which he never did before, right? So it seems like we made it worse. And I said, no. I was like, because it's like if you're at the store and someone's stealing something, if you don't say anything and they get away with it, nothing happens. But if you're like, hey, this guy's stealing, call 911, they pull out a gun or a knife, you've kind of made it worse, but it was already bad. You just confronted it. Does that make sense? So same thing here, whenever you're confronting something, it's going to look worse. Because the dog's going, oh crap, now you want to stop me? Right, let's fight about it. Right? So, anytime you're going to confront or use the remote with them at this stage, I would, until you're comfortable, use your muzzle. That's what it's for, okay? Because at home, maybe he fights it a bit more because it's his home, it's his domain, it's where he's practiced it forever, right? And now you're going against all those years of practice behavior or whatever, okay? Here, this is a new setting. So then we're gradually increasing it, right? And now he's been facing that way in whatever painting, and he's held this longer than he did originally, right? But I could give this another 5 minutes, another minute, and all of a sudden that's his threshold, he resets. Because the brain is going to dial back to what it's conditioned to do, which is I need to be looking at mom, I need to be following mom, I need to be doing something with mom, so on and so forth, right? So the longer the time frame, the more challenging it becomes, okay? So, questions so far about any of this?
No.
So, talking about the following you part, okay? Right? Let's see what he does. Go ahead and tap. And see. Tap, 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 right there. Tap, right, tap, tap, and you get those gruffs, that's just frustration, okay? So, tap, 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 and let's go to, 45, let's go to 50, tap, there you go. Tap, 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 tap. And you see how little I'm helping him with the leash? I'm really kind of just restricting where he can go. The remote is what's making him make the decision. Okay, tap, 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 right there. Tap, 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 right there. Tap, tap, tap. Let's go to 55. Tap, tap, tap.
Interesting, he keeps going to you. What's that? Do you know what that's from? Like, he has not tried a single time.
To go to you?
Yeah.
Redirecting the attachment. I mean, he's not attached to me. Tap, 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 tap. Cause kind of like, cause you mentioned earlier about like if somebody leaves the home, like you get separation anxiety from people that you like just met or something like that.
It's obviously most frequent with Austin because he lives there and he leaves every morning. But like my mom will leave and she knows him pretty well, so it's really anytime somebody's leaving the house that he just, he goes and grabs a toy and he's like whipping it. If I don't put him in the bathroom beforehand to kind of prevent that, like,
Sure. So
nervousness.
the other thing it could be is because since I'm technically closer, because for the last 3 or 4 weeks, remote has meant heal, right? Now you're correct. Like I'm surprised too. He's more so going to me because the attachment is to you. So then it would make sense that he would get frustrated and do what he's wanting to do, which is go towards you, right? But it's the same approach in terms of correcting it. Is I'm just taking the leash and very subtly applying some pressure, but we're using the remote, so we're 55, to make him solve that problem. I'm not physically putting him there, right? So the more I get that remote in, the longer he holds the position, the longer he's able to hold down that anxiety. Because remote is the only tool that can actively make a dog make a decision, okay? So like, for humans, like no one can make you do anything. You decide what you want to do, okay? It's the same thing for the dog. He decides, right? So if I do a leash and I drag him on the placemat, but he's resisting the whole time, he's only there because I'm physically stronger and I was able to put him on there, right? But mentally, he doesn't want anything to do with it, okay? This is all about mental game, okay? Because the attachment stuff is all emotional. Okay, the physical aspect of being next to you is just like the physical manifestation of it, but he's there because mentally he wants to be there. Okay, so going to earlier when you said he'll follow you all over the house, differentiating again the difference. This is preventative. This is, hey, you go here, I'm gonna go where I want to go. Right? But if mentally he wants to engage with you, he still can. Right? And that's what we're doing here is coming into place. Like let's say you placed him and you went to the kitchen and he was barking from here at you because you're too far. Right? So then you would correct him with the remote because you're saying, hey, like you don't do that, like cut the crap. And then you might see him flush off, and you'd keep promoting him until he would either place himself, or you would help guide him a bit, and he does it. Then you go back to the kitchen, and then he doesn't bark anymore.
Right.
Because you've addressed the attachment, right?
Yeah.
So that's one approach. The other approach is, if I get up and the dog starts following me, I can either use the remote to get him to flush away from me. So it's like, when I get up and move, I don't care what you do, just don't follow me.
Right.
So if he's sleeping on the couch and I get up and he goes to follow, and I tap him and he lays down and I walk away, I disengage them.
Okay.
But there's no preventative control.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're stopping the decision.
Yeah.
You're saying, I don't want you to follow me. Here, you're saying, go here, and because he's there, he can't follow you.
Right. That makes sense.
That's the difference between a behavior and obedience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I'll go over, like, this is the first approach. When we do the Zoom, I'm going to go over the behavioral approach. Okay? I'm like, hey, like, just leave me the hell alone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, like, some of my clients are like, I go to the bathroom, my dog's clawing and jumping in the door because they want to go in the bathroom with me. You know, that's an attachment issue.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I don't care what you do, just leave it alone, right? It's like my dog. They could be sleeping on the bed or whatever, and I'll get up and leave the room and come back and like they'll like, pick up their head like, hey, where you going? Or like, you know, open up their eyes if they're sleeping, and then they go back to sleep.
Yeah.
They don't care. Now, if I go and open the fridge or open a cupboard, they're like treats, right? They might come out because they're thinking they might get something,
Right.
but it's not because of attachment.
Right.
Okay, so my dogs are very independent. And independence is healthy because like with kids, you know, first day of school, that's typically how we teach that is you have to leave your child.
Right.
And it gets them used to the fact that we're not always gonna be together.
Mm-hmm.
But then they learn how to like, you know, make friends and all that stuff. And then we learn how to be away or independent of our family, okay? So dogs is very much the same. So if either it goes unaddressed or maybe you know, especially if you get like small dogs like puppies and stuff like Malteses and Condor Terriers, all of you know little tiny dogs.
Yeah.
Since they look like puppies because they're small, people tend to coddle these things, and then they're reinforcing attachment issues.
Right.
So then when they try to leave, you get problems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's really common with like smaller dogs. For me, like I have an 8-pound Chihuahua. I treat him just the way I treat my 60-pound pit.
Mm-hmm.
Don't follow me.
Yeah.
Okay, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's very independent. And he used to be a feral dog. He lived the first year of his life. Yep, 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 yep.
Around his foot.
The first year of his life, he lived out in Florida. Yep. Hold on. So that barking and stuff is residual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because now he's getting really frustrated. So for me, I'm like, I feel like we're getting close to a breaking point. Because that's when you see the worst.
Mm-hmm.
That's when dogs really flip their shit. Is because mentally, there were that physical power that we're correcting here, that we're getting here, is starting to potentially override the brain. Yep. Yeah, and it doesn't want to give up. Yep. There you go. Oh, you're at 55?
Yeah.
60. And this is exactly what happened with that one case I was telling you about. The dog's name's Toby, and we're doing place. Yep. 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 Okay.
Like, just do what I want.
And you can, like, he has a very good concept of what he's supposed to do.
Yes.
Okay?
It's
And
like
you can
he
see him
goes that way. He's like, I don't.
avoiding, yep, 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 yep. 65. So in that case with Toby, if you want to kind of get a different kind of perspective, if you look him up on our YouTube channel, yep, there you go. It's the place command.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's towards the end. And you see a very similar, where we keep going up and the dog starts to yip and like all that stuff, because the brain's getting frustrated because it doesn't want to let go, but everybody has a breaking point. right? So as like here, he's starting to get more aggressive, right? Growling, grumbling,
Yeah.
redirecting towards the leash, right? Much more vocalization because he's getting frustrated because he doesn't want to let go of the, the desire to get off or the anxiety, whatever it is.
Right.
And as we chip at it and go higher and higher, he's going, crap, this is getting to be too much. And we work him through that. He goes back there, everything stops. Okay, we keep repeating that process. So right there, he had a little streak of like 3 or 4 in a row, right? Immediately keep breaking away.
Yeah.
And as we confronted it and slowly escalated, more frustration. And then we might find it dips for a bit,
Yeah.
and then it comes back. And that's why we're doing that incremental, because we're trying to find what's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's, for him, psychologically very hard to just contain.
Yeah.
Like you said, he'll be there for a couple minutes and he moves.
Yeah.
Okay? When we do duration work, dogs are here for 2 to 3 hours. They're not moving. Okay? So we had a boarded train, it was a Black Russian Terrier. They look like schnauzers, they're huge dogs. And he was unneutered, we got him in a year. And he used to bark like, just imagine a 150-pound dog, just like jumping and barking, like it's super annoying, right? So she drops him off here, for a 4-week boarding train. And when we did place work with him, he was standing on the placemat, not for days literally, but anytime he would use it, he would never sit or lay down, he'd always stand. Because he was so anxious.
Yeah.
He was not used to being made or told what to do.
Right.
He did not want to give up, okay? Days would go by, we do hours. And then finally, after like 5 days, he like sat down for the first time. And then more days passed, and then he laid down.
Yeah.
And he was panting just like this because he was stressed.
Yeah.
Then after about a couple of weeks, he would go there and the children would go to sleep,
Yeah.
okay? But it took us 2 weeks of just like throwing them at it because like mentally, like let's say when you get angry, when we get angry, you can't be angry all day.
Right.
You let it go sooner or later. And then maybe if you see the person again, maybe something reminds you of it, you trigger.
Right.
And then you're mad again. But then, time goes by and you're not mad anymore, right? Same thing for the dogs. When they get anxious and they're doing these things that are out of logic, because physically I know he was exhausted.
Yeah.
He wanted to sit and lay down, but the anxiety was not allowing him to because it was mental override.
Yep.
But eventually the brain gets tired of being that anxious that it starts to just break down.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's why we do such long period of time, especially for dogs like him, very anxious, dogs that want to move around a lot, dogs that are used to doing whatever they're doing. It's like a kid.
Yeah.
So dogs are learning capacity of a 3 to 4 year old child. So for a 3 to 4 year old child to sit still, like for me, I remember going to church with my mom, it was hard.
Yeah.
And at the end of church, they had a playground, and she's like, okay, 15 minutes
Yeah.
to let me get that out, right? So similar for dogs, since they're either through anxiety or they're used to doing whatever they want, it's this constant movement. When you do this, it is mentally exhausting, okay? And that's more so what I'm getting at in terms of why we're covering this,
Yeah.
is it's not just the physical control component where it's like, hey, we're gonna have someone come over and they don't feel comfortable with them. Now you have a means of keeping them contained, okay? Of course, we have to work up to these lengths of time. But then it also gives you something to work on where it's like, you're gonna be here, I'm gonna go to the kitchen, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna go do that, I'm gonna be away from you for the next 30 minutes, and you're not gonna be next to me, you can't follow me, okay, as a preventative approach, until I teach you the next half of it,
Right.
okay? Questions so far?
No, I'm sure you're getting to this, but then how do we, I guess, approach this at home? Like, he's muzzled up, he's got his leash on, we get him on, and then just like walk around with the remote and just let him stay there and do his thing? Like, how does that?
So there's stages to this, and for you, I'm gonna try to skip some, because for you, this is more of a behavioral thing. I don't know if you saw there was placemats by the columns.
Yeah.
Those columns have tethers.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's like a leash to a chain leash, right? So after we teach the send, which was what you did previously, is we send the dog and we clip them and we just walk away. Okay, so right off the bat, like we're done,
Yeah.
they come off. We correct them like you were here, but since they're tethered, they have no choice but to figure out to go back onto the place.
So it has just enough leeway where they can get off if they want to, but you're correcting them to go back on.
Correct,
Okay.
right? So like here, because we don't have a tether thing,
Right.
I'm guiding them.
Yeah.
So like, some of my clients have like the places with the old school radiators.
Yeah.
And since, well, if they weren't on, maybe they're on now.
Yeah.
But like, let's say in the summer, they're not on, they're off, it's a very solid object.
Yeah.
I can tether them to the radiator,
Okay.
put the place bed or whatever
Right.
next to it, clip him and walk away.
Mhm.
And let's say I'm like at one end of the home and I can see him over here and he's trying to sneak off and I can remote him. I don't even have to get up.
Right,
He's gonna figure it out.
yeah,
It's just taking the patience to make him figure it out,
okay.
right? Because like earlier when I was guiding him, it was very, very subtle.
Yes.
I did very little.
Yeah.
I go, you're gonna figure out what to do.
Yep,
This is a mental game, right?
okay.
That's the hard part for people.
Yeah,
Is they see the dog and they're like, but the dog, I'm like, they keep moving around, like, make them figure it out.
yeah.
Make them figure it out.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that. Like, if you watch any of my other videos,
Mhm.
I give people steps.
Mhm.
I go have the dog here, so they're next to you, so they make a mistake, it's easier to correct, right? And I give them weeks of a progress report for you, because you want it to, it's like boot camp,
Mhm.
okay? Because that's what we would do with him here, and that's where we make such progress.
Yeah,
Is, you know, you can use a kitchen table, you know, this guy's smaller, so you can get away with stuff.
yeah,
But I would definitely do this where he's away from you, so
Right.
you're pressing that behavior.
yeah,
But then also, with people coming in and leaving, instead of putting them in the bathroom,
mhm,
he would be, you know, tethered on the placemat. They leave, he starts to throw a fit, you correct him for throwing the fit, he's most likely gonna break off.
mhm.
You play with the number, with whatever you gotta do, to make him go back on again until he settles.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't know if you noticed, each time we've increased it and like broken the behavior, he stays longer and longer each time,
Mhm.
okay? That's how this process works. So even though I'm just running my mouth here and filling you in on stuff, I'm doing this intentionally,
Right,
okay? So there's two aspects or components to this. There's the sending component,
mhm,
when I say this, you go here, and then there's the duration component,
mhm.
okay? The send is pretty simple, he's already got it from before. All we did was reteach it my style. And now it's, okay, bud, go there and don't move for the next 4 hours,
Mhm.
2 hours, 30 minutes, whatever you decide.
Yeah,
There's no such thing as too much because this is not redundant.
right,
We're not repeating anything. It's just you go here and don't move.
yeah.
Okay, the rest is on him.
Mhm.
If he goes there and chills and falls asleep, that's cool.
Amazing.
You know, and then maybe I get up and walk out and stuff and then he perks up, hey, where are you going? Correct him. He has to go back on. He settles, I go back to doing what I was doing.
Okay.
Okay? The main thing is you have to make him do it using pressure. Very little help, if no help at all, and no words.
Mhm.
Once you've cued spot, that's it. We don't repeat anything. I don't say stay, I don't say spot again. It's just if you try to sneak off, you're gonna get remoted.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's what keeps the brain in check.
Does it matter if, like, 'cause his bed is up against a wall right now?
Uh-huh.
And I mean, does it matter to him if we move it, like if we, because like I'm thinking about, like we're talking about tethering it and there's nothing around there right now.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you-
even less so since we're packing up to move, but,
Sure.
you know, I could find something to kind of,
Sure. And if that's the case, because your setup is different at the moment,
right,
is you can do what I mentioned earlier, which was like, let's say, you know, this is the end of the couch. I have space here.
mhm,
I can put the bed here. You can tether it here,
yeah,
right?
right,
Because, you know, the couch, she's not gonna move the couch, I don't
Right.
think. And you can get up and move and still use it to your advantage.
yeah,
We're just not getting the extra challenge of him being away from you.
right,
Does that make sense?
yep,
So if that's what you have at the moment, you use what you have,
okay,
okay? And then once you get to your new place, it was like, hey, now we have the setup or whatever, then you just transition it, okay?
That was my other question too, because, I mean, we're looking at places now, but, I mean, right now, his, you know, place is right in the epicenter of where everyone walks. And our thought was to kind of get him off into a corner where he's out of the way, there's not gonna be people walking right in front of him. I don't know if that's better just to kind of disengage him a little further, or if he kind of should be right there to,
For me, there's the benefit, there's pros and cons of both,
right,
okay? The pro of having him like in that epicenter is he's gotta learn to tolerate all this
all
stuff,
the commotion, yeah,
okay? The con would be if for whatever reason he decided to guard the bed, obviously if he's muzzled, it's not a big deal, but if he were to not be muzzled, risk, right?
right,
The pro of having him in the corner is you can tell your guests like, hey, he's over there, he's not gonna move. Just give him like a 6 foot space,
Mhm.
respect his, you know,
Yeah.
corner. And then now that you have control over two things, you have control over where he's at, you know he's not gonna move, and you have control over your guests and saying respect that boundary, is it reduces risk,
Right.
okay? The con would be, you're not really pushing him emotionally,
Right.
but I always tell everyone, I'm like, there's no real right or wrong in the setting or how you approach it. The way I approach it is what works best for the dog and the family for any given moment, okay? So like I mentioned that I would not use this to, I wouldn't apply this for like people coming in because that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
But I've had clients in the past who did use it for that very thing because they had small dogs, and it was easier for them to use this instead of the exercise that I showed them. Preference-wise, I prefer the other, but for them, they said this works better. I said, that's fine. I was like, if you're happy and you got the control, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay? So I would just opt for what you think is gonna work best. Okay? Again, no right or wrong.
And then at what point would you stop tethering him, right? Like, cause that's more of
Right,
a.
that's a long-term goal.
Yeah.
That would be when you place it there and like everything's happening, you know, for, you know, weeks to months. Because we use a tether for a few things. One is to help in the very beginning, but then we get to a point where we know the dog doesn't need anymore, but we do it as precaution because we don't need a dog getting off leash or whatever, roaming around.
Right.
But they don't get up, right? Is when you see that, and you're like, man, it's been like 2 months or 2 weeks or whatever since he's even tried to escape, and he just goes there and chills, and we've opened doors, we've opened the front door, we've had delivery, we've done this, we've done that, and hundreds of reps of like does nothing.
Yeah.
Then I go, you can remove the tether.
Yeah.
And if you want, as an additional step, you can remove the tether but still leave the leash on. Right? So if he starts to, for whatever reason, one day book through, you have something to grab, you have something to step on to give you leverage.
Yeah.
Okay? But really it's you want the mistakes, you want that anxiety to build up because it gives you something to confront and go like, yeah, you're not gonna do that. Okay? Other questions? So this last bit, right when you get really growly, really snippy,
Yeah.
but that's been the longest and the quietest he's been the whole time.
Yeah, and it looks like he's like about had it, but he's resisting.
Yeah, you can still see the discomfort.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the shaking, right?
Yep.
That's all normal. That energy has to go somewhere. Okay, so for people, as for stressors, you know, you can smoke a cigarette, you can have a drink, you can go for a run, you can punch a punching bag, you know, you can call a friend. We have so many outlets for stress. Dogs have very few. Licking, chewing, nipping, biting, barking, panting, salivating, it's usually very mouth-based
Yeah.
or like shaking. So the shaking stuff is part of the process. We call it detoxing. He's got to let that energy go. The panting is perfectly fine. So like, let's say you really stress this command with him. For a couple of weeks, you might notice like he's just very uncomfortable. And then one day you send him and 5 minutes later, he's fast asleep. Like he's learning to go to a relaxed state much faster.
Yeah.
And dogs become what you allow them to practice. So if in most cases with dogs, it doesn't matter that they get freedom, right? Because usually dogs are loose within the home. But then when we get a dog that doesn't know how to chill, relax, or shut down on their own, this is a way of us kind of forcing them into learning that off switch. But it could take time, like that Russian Terrier I told you about, right? Like he took a couple weeks before he went from standing to sitting to laying down to finally just going, all right, cool, let me go here and sleep. Okay? And that's because we pressed it several times a day.
Yeah.
Wake up in the morning, potty break, a little bit of training, duration work. Potty break, playtime, training, duration work. You know, potty, duration work.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And it took us 2 weeks. So for you with him, it could be longer. And he was only a year old.
Yeah.
If he's older, he's had more time of practice behavior.
Right.
Could take longer. But the most important thing and what's going to help you as progress faster is that number. Okay, so we stopped at what number here?
65.
65. It's like maybe at home, I start at 45. So like maybe you end up going to 85, but you get there faster.
Yeah.
Okay? And then maybe you always go to 85, like every time you work with him, then I go, okay, now I'm going to start at 80. So you cut the crap immediately, you know? And then he starts holding that position without being so confrontational right off the bat. Okay? Questions about this?
Nope.
So let's go, I'm gonna have you go ahead here, and you're gonna grab his leash, And when you take his leash here, I suspect that he might try to prematurely break away, okay? There you go. Yep, 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 choke up on that leash. There you go. Wait a moment. Okay. So what you're doing here is like, hey, just because I grabbed the leash,
Yep.
it's not a big deal, dude.
Right.
Okay, so what you can practice at home even is you pick up the leash and stuff, and then, good, then I drop it and I walk away. You're removing the meaning of you taking that leash, where it's like, it doesn't mean you're gonna get to be free,
Right.
okay? So for this week, we're not gonna worry about the spot cue, okay? You're just gonna do like you do with the heel, you're just gonna tap them there, and that tap is gonna be the word,
Yeah.
okay? And then you just reinforce it like you did today. Next time I see you, we'll talk about, it's super simple, you just say the word and you tap it and it goes. But for now, I just want you to focus on just using the tap to send and using the tap to reinforce.
So then should we not use the word at any other time? I mean, because we used to use it like,
Yeah,
if he's, right, so avoid using it, right?
Yeah, just tap,
Okay.
okay?
Even if he's, even if he's like unmuzzled on like, because we use it like, right, we're cooking in the kitchen, so maybe we should just put the muzzle on.
anytime you're gonna use this command, set them up.
Okay,
Leash, muzzle, remote collar,
okay,
okay? Because you're trying to build consistency, because
Yeah.
before it was spot, I'm here for 2 minutes, I leave.
yeah.
Okay, but now that you're gonna be challenging him, and I like the whole like we send him and he'd be cooking and stuff,
Mhm.
because he's gonna be more inclined to make mistakes,
Right,
is you're using that to your advantage
Okay.
to make him stay put.
okay,
Okay?
cool.
And break.
And break?
Good. So you have your homework for the week, fairly easy
Yep.
in terms of what it is.